From the Friends of Crown Heights Educational Centers, this is Family Time with Friends. Join top experts in child development and education as we share the latest science and real world strategies for raising happy, healthy, and confident kids from infancy through adolescence. And now, today's program.
Welcome back to Family Time with Friends. My name is Chanel Bryan, an Educational Director at Friends of Crown Heights Educational Centers. Today, we are honored to welcome Ms. Joy Miller Guthrie, an educator and director with Friends of Crown Heights at Kosciuszko Street. Joy has worked extensively with children of varying abilities and dispositions across preschool and elementary settings. Drawing from her lived experiences as a teacher and an administrator, she recently published her first children's book, Differently Abled. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Joy.
And thank you for having me, Ms. Bryan.
So, Ms. Joy, can you share a bit about your journey in education, your current role as a director with Friends of Crown Heights?
Where do we start? I've been in education for quite some time. I started in education in about 1989, 1990, and I'm not giving away my age. But I started not in America. I started in education in my home country because I'm an immigrant, as you might have guessed from my accent. I'm from Jamaica, and I started in education in 1990 as what is equivalent here to elementary school. In Jamaica, it's called primary. I was a primary school teacher until 2009, 2008 rather, when I kind of did a segue into early childhood as an administrator in 2009. Yeah, so it's been a minute.
So you've worked with children with different and diverse abilities, learning styles, and temperaments.
For sure.
How have those experiences shaped your approach to teaching and leadership?
I would like to think the experiences have made me a better person. Definitely a better teacher, a better administrator. When I came into early childhood, I thought it was just like stepping down elementary education a little bit, but oh boy, that was definitely not so. And I had to learn a lot. I made a lot of missteps, and I did my master's degree in child development. So I had to go back to school to learn how to do this right. And I hope over the years, I've gotten better at doing this. And hopefully I'm doing it right.
Well, I see that you are. You're still education director. You're doing great with your book.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So, what inspired you to write Differently Abled? And why do you feel this story was so important to share through children's literature?
My inspiration came, I think, primarily from my family situation. And a lot of the motivation also came from situations I encountered in the classroom. I remember being in a kindergarten class. I was teaching a kindergarten class, and there was a little boy in the class who was different from the others in terms of, he had an IEP, which is an individualized education document, right? And I wasn't sure what to do with it because I'd never seen one before. I'd never encountered that in my home country. And I remember I was doing a college course, and I happened to strike up a conversation with one of my classmates. She was a special education teacher. And I expressed a little my frustration to her, like, I have this little boy, he does this, I don't know how to make it better because he throws these tantrums and I am overwhelmed. And she made some suggestions which I took, and I mentioned it's a little bit of that is incorporated into the book, and I found that it worked.
Great.
And that was when I recognized that working with these children are not impossible. You just need to have the experience, the knowledge, and just the right tools. So that was, and my family background Some of it diagnosed, some of it undiagnosed. I am doing my own diagnosis without the training. But I think there is autism in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen signs of it in a nephew and one of my brothers and in one of my own children and definitely one of my grandchildren because, yes, I'm a grandmother. One of my grandsons is diagnosed as learning disabled.
Okay.
So I know it's a cruel world out there, and a lot of times these children can be bullied, and they're definitely misunderstood. So this book is the purpose is to get the conversation started from the preschool level among the children, with the teachers, with the children, and to develop empathy.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So, was there a particular moment or experience in your classroom or as an administrator that sparked the idea for this book?
I believe it was a combination of experiences, and as I referred before to the little boy I taught in kindergarten, his name is Ronald, and he was a sweet child, but he tended to have these tantrums that were difficult to control. And as I said, I sought some help. I got some tools that I could run with, and I saw that they worked. And just, sometimes you have these moments of reflection,
Mm-hmm.
and everything just kind of came together. I had a conversation with my eldest son, who is just one of my sounding boards. And, I'd have these conversations with people, and they say, why don't you write a book? So, and I said, you know what, why not?
Right.
So one day I just sat down and I wrote four books, which eventually will become a series. So the first one has been published. The second one is in process.
Okay.
So Differently Abled is out there.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing the other series. But just without giving too much away, can you tell us what Differently Abled is about and the message that you hope young readers and families take from it?
I've seen a lot of people bullied, and I've seen my brother bullied because he was so misunderstood.
Yeah.
And people who seem to be not normal, in quotations, there are a lot of hurtful words that are used for them, and people just do not understand that we have different abilities. I often tell people that parallel parking is a challenge for me because it's just not one of my strong abilities. I believe, and most of us who have gone to do education in college, we know about Gardner's, his theory about your different abilities, right? And I think we have different abilities, and people who are not normal, what we consider normal, their abilities are just a little different from what would be considered the normal. Some of them are really, really strong in some areas, like off the chain strong. And I saw that in my own son, one of my middle son, that his language was way above what was considered average, but his math skills were were very, very low, and he had absolutely no interest. He hated numbers. And I think when we understand that and we make a concerted effort to lift them up and build them up and celebrate them for what they do well and encourage them in the areas where they're not as strong, then we will get much more rounded individuals in the classroom.
I agree. So the title, Differently Abled, is powerful. What does that phrase mean to you, especially in the context of early childhood and elementary education?
I think, as I said before, we have different abilities. And your strong abilities might be a little different from me. It's for all of us to recognize that I am strong where you might be weak. And just to recognize each other's strengths and just to, as I said, celebrate that. And if children are taught from an early age to work cooperatively and to support each other. Because my kindergarten classroom experience, Ronald, it was such a wonderful thing to see in that classroom how the children rallied around him and supported him. And I recognize that in a normal, if I'm doing a testing, and if, let's say, you're supposed to test for half an hour or an hour, if I were to give him the same time as all the other children, he wouldn't finish. And if I treated him just like the other children, he would not succeed. But it wasn't because he didn't know the content. So I had to learn to make modifications. So I would sit with him and guide him through the test. And he would, most times he scored 90s and 100. So I was able, because I was given the support by my colleague, and I was able to develop that empathy to support him and to scaffold him. And he had failed miserably. Well, he didn't do very well. Let me rephrase that. Because he was in District 75. And he really didn't succeed that year. So his mother took him out and brought him to a private school where he was able to be in a different kind of setting, a smaller class. It was much more supportive, I am assuming. I don't know what happened in District 75, but but I know what I can speak of is that he was very, very successful in my kindergarten class because, I was able to garnish or to take what I had learned from my colleague and apply it. So that's the aim of Differently Able, for everyone to recognize that if we support people who seem to be a little different from us, in whatever way they need to be supported, they can be successful individuals.
How does your book encourage empathy, understanding, and inclusion among children?
I believe if books such as this, and to be honest, also one of my motivators for writing this book, I was searching for books as an education director for social emotional, that books were written in that category, and I had a lot of difficulty finding those books. So I recognized that this was a niche and we need more of this. And I believe even though we most times were focused on teaching numeracy and literacy, so a lot of times people do not recognize the importance of social emotional development, or they just expect it to happen naturally, or just to say to the children, play nicely. And they don't recognize that this has to be taught and to encouraged.
Exactly.
So I believe when you incorporate these books into your practice as a teacher and have these conversations with little children, that will help them to become empathetic individuals. And this is a quality that will take them into adulthood.
So, how do you envision educators and families using this book, whether it's in the classroom or at home, or as part of conversations about differences and abilities?
I believe it can be used as a part of your read aloud. It can be used whenever teachable moments arise. I remember working with a child, not last school year, the year before, and he posed some behavioral challenges. And I remember, and he got very physical with some of the children and with the teachers too. And I remember I was called to the classroom, and I went and I took him out. And I took him to my office, and I said to him, I'm going to read you a story. And I actually read my book, and we had a whole conversation, and I spoke to him about how big and wonderful and how much potential he had. And I pointed out to him a particular scene in the book and a particular event when Abel would throw these tantrums. And of course, you must recognize by now that was inspired by my student, Ronald, and that when you behave like this, when you're mean to other people, nobody's going to like you. But if you're kind, then it will be reciprocated. So if he continued along that path, he was not going to have a lot of friends. And if he, just like Abel, people would rally around him and want to be his friends if he was kind and, just was a better person. So I think this is a conversation that teachers can have with children and parents can have with their own children. And that's where building empathy can begin.
So, as a director, how do you promote inclusive practices and create learning environments where all children feel valued and respected?
I've found that a lot of times I've stepped into classrooms and I've seen situations. And there are times when you can pull a teacher aside and say, this is what you do and this is what you shouldn't do. But I think it's much more powerful when you model it.
Right.
So there are times I will see, things that are not happening the way they should. And I will step in and I'll model. And I think that's probably the best way. So if my book or similar books were to be in the classrooms, I could actually model how you help children to overcome social emotional issues, obstacles, and start building that part of their nature, their character.
Nice. Thank you. So, what advice would you give to educators who want to better support children with diverse abilities but may feel unsure or overwhelmed?
These things, you don't just pick them out of the air. A lot of it comes with experience, and some of it or most of it has to come from training. There's a lot of I give kudos to TSG for this. There are a lot of trainings on in quorum. The directors, if you see that there are issues in your program, you can either seek out external persons to do trainings with your staff, or you yourself can do the research, whether you're going to do it in your staff meetings or you're going to do it for professional development. But a lot of this has to be done through training. And a lot of times teachers fail not because they lack ability, but because they have not been trained. So they don't have the tools for their toolkits.
Right. Thank you. So, what encouragement would you offer to fellow educators who are considering turning their professional experience into a children's book?
First of all, I'd say go for it. I believe too often teachers stay in the classroom and all we do is teach. There's so much more that we can do. I think our voices, our experiences, our talents should be out there. And we do not take the opportunity to become entrepreneurs. So I think this is a marketplace that we need to tap into. We should be writing the stories that are read in the classroom because we're all smart and we're experienced and we're knowledgeable. And if this is your passion, go right ahead. Just jump in feet first. It might not work the first time, but I think when you create something like a book, it's not food, it's not clothing. This is something that is your legacy that you can leave for your children, for your generation, for the profession. So just do it. And I wish everybody good luck.
What do you hope children feel when they see themselves reflected in differently abled? And what legacy do you hope this book leaves behind?
My illustrations for differently abled, I was very, very purposeful in how the characters were crafted. I remember having a conversation with my illustrator, and I said, no, I need this boy to look this way. I need his parents to be biracial because I'm making a point of reflecting diversity in my book. The teacher also should be a different race. The children in the classroom, because this is New York. Yes. This is where I've lived for 20 years. And I'm reflecting the community that I see around me. New York is a very diverse place. And I think the diversity that's here is very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just reflecting the reality of what I'm living. And we should learn to accept everybody and see everybody as special and having something to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my motivation.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. So in closing, thank you, Ms. Joy, for sharing your insights, your heart for inclusion in education, and your powerful story. Differently Abled is a meaningful contribution to children's literature and to the important conversation surrounding ability, acceptance, and belonging. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so very welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. And thank you for another episode of Family Time with Friends. We'll see you next time.